After the brief dedication, Faust interjects a prelude in the theater. Think about this. It is another deferment to the ultimate goal of the play itself, another thing that we have to get through, another layer. Very interesting. Bear that in mind as we go forward. The Prelude is, in fact, a convention of Renaissance theater primarily. Scholars often point to Shakespeare, and also the fourth century poet from India, Kalidasa, which is a nod to Goethe's enthusiasm for Weltliteratur. But the Prelude is basically three characters walk on stage and have a conversation. They are three figures from the theater world. And the translations have them alternately as, they're the manager, the theater manager, sometimes called the director. Also, there is a poet or playwright and an actor or clown. And the translations can go back and forth with all of these. But basically, these are giving three very different perspectives of the theater in general. And notably, these are all roles that Goethe himself had fulfilled in Weimar. He had run a theater as a manager. He had certainly been a playwright, and he was occasionally seduced onto the stage, into the spotlight as an actor. So there is some familiarity with that, let's say. It wasn't completely alien to the audience, nor to Goethe. But what it is an introduction, a wake up to the audience who could be a little distracted and milling about and not necessarily paying attention. It's not quite so rapt as modern theater would have it. And it is a way of gathering together the attentions and the focus and the energies of the room, of the theater, and pulling them into a single point of focus. So it does serve a purpose. It is very practical in that regard. Here, the manager begins with, "You two who've always stood by me when times were hard and the playhouse empty, what do you think we may hope for from this tour of ours through German country? I'd like to please the crowd here, for they're really so easygoing, so patient. The posts are up, the floorboards laid, and they came in search of entertainment. Taking their seats, they look around at ease, wishing to be surprised, each one. Well, I know with this audience how to please." Which is a strictly business-oriented perspective, which is a very obviously middle-class concern of the time. Making some money, pleasing the audience, getting the tickets sold. Everybody feels good and they go on. It's not necessarily supposed to be some great religious experience or some great enlightenment, but it's just supposed to be a nice way to spend an afternoon. Interesting as well here how he points out through German country, the notion that this is a touring company of players, and they are perhaps in a relatively small or provincial town, not unlike Weimar, and they are just, sizing up the audience. What can they expect? And the poet picks up with, from there, "Don't talk to me about that crazy crowd. One look at them and all my wits desert me. Oh, shield me from that shoving, shouting horde that swallows you up against your will completely. No, lead me to some quiet, remote place where poets know their only happiness, where love and dearest friends inspire and nurse the blessed gift that is the power of verse." Here, he doesn't want to deal with the crowd. The poet is the artist, and he is a figure of torture, self-torture, and reclusiveness. And he wants to go away from the crowd and commune with himself. All very romantic notions. And he sees the crowd as, if anything, a horde, a rabble, just coarse people that he wants nothing to do with. All of this is very, very indicative of the Romantic age and the portrait of the artist as a solitary, inspired figure, one figure in touch with a divine spirit, perhaps, who then speaks that divine spirit to share, not necessarily with the crowd, but with other people other people who can access that same note, that same pitch of inspiration. But he is not necessarily driven by the need to connect with anyone else. It is all about a solitary figure. The clown, or the actor, depending on how you want to translate that, comes in and he stakes out his own point of view. To be amused, that's their heart's desire. Having a clown on stage who knows what his business is not to be sneezed at. It matters to know how to please. When yours is the stuff to delight and content a whole theater full, you don't sourly mutter, the public's a mob, always changeable. What you want's a full house, the sign out saying, standing room only. For the bigger the house, the better the response you can count on. And that just drives home a pragmatic point that you need an audience in order for the art to live. You need an audience to be there in some respect. And they shouldn't necessarily be looked down on. They should be respected as a participant in this activity of theater. And I think that is significant. It is pragmatic. It is also perhaps a little coarse in its way, suggesting that he can get up there and play to the audience and get them to do as they want, making them less active participants than marionettes for him to pull the strings on. And there's a little bit of diciness there. But throughout the Prelude, they have a very active discussion on the different roles of the theater and the different importances of it. And over time, you can see their language gets more poetic. And they are slowly drawn into this more expressive, poetic mode, and and you just have to wonder about what is the purpose of that? The poet, of course, comes in towards the end. His last great speech is, "Then give me back those times again when I, too, was a leaf uncurled, when mist still filled the morning world, and song after song poured out of me, like a fountain flowing uninterruptedly, when a bud was promised miracle, and I plucked 1,000 flowers that filled the vales with their rich spectacle. The nothing I owned was more than enough, by fictions delighted, impelled towards truth. Oh, give me back that unquelled ardor, the happiness whose depth is pain, the strength of hate, love's superpower. Oh, give me back my youth again." Okay. Very interesting. The clown. "Youth, my dear colleague, you need in the following cases: when the enemy's crowding you hard on the fight, when pretty girls in summer dresses kiss and squeeze you with all their might, when running hard you glimpse in the distance the wreath that rewards the fleetest foot, when after the madness whirling dances with drinking you wear the night out, but to sweep the old familiar heartstrings boldly, yet with fine grace too, to make by pleasing indirections for the end your drama has in view. That's the job for you, old fellows, and we respect you for your skill. Age doesn't make us childish, God knows, just finds us the same old children still." Children, very big focus of romanticism broadly, but the difference in the poet is still going for, he is all very much about himself. He wants to be made young again. He wants to be reborn in a kind of resurrection, a religious experience of art. And okay, fine, he is the suffering artist. The clown comes in and says, well, you know, you only need youth for a few things. He is always a little bit more pragmatic, and yes, arguably a little misogynist in saying, well, you need it for girls, which, you know, is kind of true. But there, aside from that continuity of the clown saying, well, okay, we need certain things for certain things, very pragmatic, as opposed to the starving, suffering artist, they are both getting more poetic, I would say. They are both talking in very expressive, imagistic terms. Plucked 1,000 flowers that filled the vales with their rich spectacle. You know, very florid, very imagistic, very poetic, and the images of the clown himself. When pretty girls in summer dresses kiss and squeeze you with all their might, and running hard you glimpse in this distance the wreath that rewards the fleetest foot. Those are very poetic images. So there is a imagistic quality that is being conjured on the stage, which is up till now just basically a bare stage with 3 figures on it. They are invoking the spirit of imagery of art itself. And then even the manager, the director, whatever you want to call him, Mr. Pragmatic, Mr. Business Minded, says, so don't imagine I want you to save me money on paint and proprieties. Hang out heaven's big and little lamps. Scatter stars over the canvas skies. Let's have fire and flood and dizzying steeps. All sorts of birds and beasts to do the thing liberally. And thus on a narrow platform we are able to go all the way round creation's great circle at a brisk enough pace, yet deliberately as well, from heaven through this our world down to hell. Really sweepingly poetic imagery. Now, there is a pragmatic side to this. He is trying to inspire, not just, he could be, think about what an actor could do, he could be trying to inspire those 2 figures on the stage, or also all the audience around him. And he knows that his stock in trade is art and mystery and beauty and something quasi-divine. And so he is trying to invoke that. And you can look at that ironically, or you can look at that sincerely. Either way, it is bringing on this reception, this awareness of the power of words, which in theater of that time is going to be, that is going to be very significant, because you need the language to make the art live. It is not a theater with a lot of special effects apparatus, especially a play like Faust, where you have all this stuff going on, and so much of it has to be in the imagination. He is conjuring the imagination, like the great forerunner of this play, Shakespeare, always conjuring the imagination. Think Prospero in The Tempest. The force of that creates a kind of alchemy. Alchemy is very big for Goethe generally, but he is trying to take all of the coarse metals before him and transform it into something beautiful. Now, the scholars say that this play Prelude was written around the turn of the century, when Goethe had already been working on it for some time, and it'd be another few years before he actually finished it. It reflects to some degree Goethe's real life experiences, and you can go into the biography of that if you want. But it also tracks the individual poetic genesis of this play, and shows an influence of a more public-facing art. He is getting closer to releasing this work to the public as a stage play, perhaps as a publication, perhaps maybe he doesn't know just yet, but he is starting to think in those terms, move away perhaps from the closet drama understanding of it for his own ability to work on it, moving away from that, and all also maybe pushing back a little at some of the possible philosophical readings that critics have been going nuts with for the past 200 years. It can be read then as Goethe kind of debating himself about the public and private roles of art. And this, of course, makes him, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the main character in this cosmic drama about human civilization.